Hey guys, it's Cal from the Lighting Doctor again here. Thanks so much to everybody who's watched the first two parts of this video series. Here we are on the third part of this video, which I'm really excited about. It's my favorite part, and it's the stuff we're going to talk about today is the stuff I get the most comments and most questions about, and the stuff that people find the most useful. So before I get into that, I do want to thank everybody who sent their comments and questions, who's been sharing it on Facebook and YouTube and so on. Hopefully you've gotten a lot of value out of the first two videos so far, and as you can see, it's not as overwhelming as you think to go and put in a low voltage landscape lighting system. I mean, it is a lot safer, it's a lot easier to design. There's not a whole ton of moving parts. Hopefully you guys have learned some nice money saving tricks and a couple little tips that's going to make it a little bit quicker for you to install a system, as well as some ways that you can save some money while doing that. So hopefully you guys have gotten all that out of it so far. Please stay tuned at the end of this video, because we are gonna kind of launch something that we're a little bit excited about with our do-it-yourself kits. Just our way to say thanks for watching this video series, and hope you got something out of it. Some discounts and some promos and stuff that we're going to be giving to you guys that you can use going down the road, just to help you save a little bit more money, and kind of just give you that little push, so that maybe this is the year that you decide to put in landscape lighting. So again, keep those comments and questions coming in this video. The reason I'm excited about it is because this is the video that will take your landscape lighting kind of to the next level. It's not just putting a couple lights to light a pathway or light a couple trees. It's really getting into some of the different techniques and tips that the best landscape lighting designers out there will use. And you don't often see these, because most homeowners or most landscapers that put in lights that don't do a lot of it and don't understand this miss out on the opportunities that I'm going to talk about in this video. And not only will the stuff that I'm going to talk about in this video make your yard, your landscape, and your home look that much better, there's also some really important cost-saving tips in here, because you can go and do the same thing, if not even better, job of lighting your home with fewer lights if you use some of these techniques. So you can save a bunch of money by doing that, and really have it stand out from anything else that's out there. So again, keep those comments and questions coming. We'd love to get you guys' feedback. Enjoy the next 10 or 15 minutes or so of this video, and then I'll be right back to talk about a little bit of some of the deals and the things that we're going to pass on to you guys there for a short period of time. So enjoy this video. So for the next couple minutes, I'm going to go through some examples and show you guys really what landscape lighting can do for you. And I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the most popular lighting fixtures and how to use them most effectively. Show you some examples of what you can do with lighting and what you can do with different types of fixtures, as well as leave you with some last minute kind of helpful hints and tips that we've used over the years that have really kind of helped separate us. And hopefully we'll do the same for you, so that you can really elevate the level of the landscape lighting that you do in your yard to create that great outdoor living space. So the first fixture that I'm going to talk about, which is easily the most popular one, is the most talked about one, is the one you see the most often, is these uplighting fixtures. So where these are used extensively is to light up trees, primarily is what you see people use them for. I'm going to show you some different ideas and some different examples that you can use these lights for. What we've done with our lights is, we still use a LED light, but instead of buying an integrated one that typically costs quite a bit more, what we do is we retrofit all of our uplights with a drop-in LED bulb. And what that does is it still gives us all the advantages of LED, but we basically are able to cut our cost of those light fixtures in half. So without going into too much detail, some things to look forward or look towards when you're buying a drop-in bulb is the color. You'll hear guys talk about the color temperature. 2700 Kelvin or K is basically the equivalent of a halogen bulb, so it gives you that nice yellow light. So a lot of times people get scared of LED. Well, this is the equivalent of a halogen bulb. It's not that bright white light that I think people are scared that they might see. You still get that nice soft warm light that you would get from a halogen light. I always try and use a larger spread bulb. Now, depending on what you buy, you can often get different beams. You can often get So what we try and do is retrofit our uplights with a really good quality drop-in LED bulb. The reason we do that is we can buy fixtures that are integrated with LED already built in, but by dropping in the bulbs, it gives us a little bit more flexibility, as well as it lowers our cost of those lights, and that's something that we can pass on to our customers. One thing that a lot of people get nervous about with LED lights is that they think that it's that bright white color, when it's not the case. If you look at any bulb now, it usually has a color temperature on it. 2700 Kelvin up to 3000 is that warm yellow light that you're used to seeing from a halogen. So if you're looking for a bulb, that's kind of the color you want to stick to. The next thing to consider is the angle of the bulb. So how wide does that beam spread? You can get it down to like 10 degrees, which is just a very narrow beam, which means it's only gonna light a very small area. I always prefer to use a larger beam spread because I want to light as much as possible with as few lights as possible. So I always look for a 36 to 60 degree bulb. And then just to give you a little bit of a comparison, when you're comparing an LED versus a halogen bulb, the other thing to look for is the wattage. A 4.5 watt LED bulb is the equivalent of about a 20 watt halogen bulb, which is probably your most common and most standard uplight that you're going to find anywhere. And then a 5.5 watt bulb is the equivalent of about a 35 watt halogen bulb. So now where you can use these, I mean, obviously they look good in any landscape, but the more you can try and hide the actual fixture, because we're not trying to show off the fixture, even though some of them look really nice, we're really trying to just get the effect. So it's always best to try and hide them, behind rocks or shrubs so that you don't see where the light's coming from, but you get the effect from it. So I mean, here's just a couple examples of how they've kind of done that in the foliage. And then here's an example of, a patio that's been lit up by, I would say primarily by uplighting. There's some path lighting here, but I think what people sometimes forget is that by putting an uplight on a tree that's around a patio, you get a lot of reflection off that foliage that sometimes give you a lot more light than if you were to surround your patio with a bunch of garden lights like this. So I mean, I love the concept of trying to uplight features around it and getting the light to bounce off, because typically you can get more light with having to add a lot less fixtures. Again, another example here is where they've just kind of used it on some different shrubs and stuff they have in the back. They didn't have to light up the whole backyard, but they've selected some key shrubs that they've used the uplighting for there, as well as they've used it, like you see most people where they just light the trunk of a tree and get that light up into the canopy. But again, getting that light up into the canopy, you can get a lot of light to reflect down off of that into your yard. So I mean, a really good technique, really good strategy for using less lights is use the foliage to get some reflection and light up the yard. Another really cool example, I mean, this one has some path lighting in some of the shrub areas, but I also like what they've done in the back here with some of the uplighting along these cedar trees. Again, it's not every 5 feet. They've spread it out to kind of create a cool effect, but it's just another example of where you can use these. I like this one on a patio like this, where you have some trees that are kind of overhanging. It's really cool if you can light that tree up and get that light into the canopy that's over top of where you're sitting, because it almost creates like a moonlight effect, or you get some reflection down on you, and it's a really easy way to light up a big area if you have some trees like this. So I really like this technique in this example. Again, in a garden or a shrub bed, a lot of times people will just fill these with different path and garden lights. I like the idea of putting in uplights even on some smaller trees and some smaller shrubs, because again, you get that reflection off of the leaves and the foliage that will help light up that garden area anyway. So you can use a lot less fixtures by using a technique like this. Plus, you can't see the fixture, which I always think is pretty cool when you can just see the light, just see the effect, but people can't see the fixture where that's coming from. Not the greatest picture, but another example of the use of uplights. I mean, obviously, you've got a mix of path lights and uplights in this one, but I really like using uplights along houses, and especially ones that have a textured, whether it's rock work or some kind of texture where you kind of get that shadowing off the different textures. So, I mean, that's a really cool idea. I think it's very underutilized. Not enough people do that. whether you have $1 million home or not, I think it's a really cool technique. And I mean, obviously using it to light up your trees, again, along a driveway, you can still light up that driveway without using path lights, but just getting that reflection off the foliage, I mean, I think is so, so key. Another example of how they've used them, in a couple different areas. Again, uplighting some trees over here, but then uplighting the front of the house. And it doesn't have to be real extensive rock work. Even a lot of times on stucco, if you kind of hide it behind the plants, it can create a really cool effect and really highlight your home. This is where I talked earlier videos about curb appeal. I mean, you go to a house that's lit up like this, you can't help but notice it and have it stand out a little bit more. So I mean, it's a really easy way to make your house stand out a little bit more and give it that extra curb appeal. This is a really cool shot. Another way that I like to use uplighting is to create these shadowing effects that you see over here along the house. Really all it is just an uplight, but it's just positioned a little differently. Instead of having it right up against the house, lighting up this whole area, they've just placed it back a little bit behind this tree, and now it shines through and it creates this shadow on the house, which I think is a really cool look. If you have that kind of stuff, if you have some trees or some shrubs that you can kind of utilize and create some shadowing. Again, just another real cool example of different shadowing you can do with lights. This pertains more to downlighting, which I'll talk about in a little bit, but a really cool look that I like to use. And just another example of how they've used it, again, under trees to uplight the trunks and the foliage, but then along the house as well, just to kind of make the house pop out and stand out a bit. There's a little bit of path lighting along with this one. And one thing I want to point out is you see how, I go to a lot of houses where it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, they've got 10, 12 solar lights just lining the driveway. And we're not trying to land a plane. We're just trying to create some cool effects and provide a little bit of light. And you see how here they've got basically two, 3 path lights that light up this whole area, because we don't need to light up the whole thing. We just need to give people a sense of what's there. So, just some really cool examples of uplighting. The other type of light that I'd say is probably the most utilized, but I think could be used a lot less, but still has its place, is just path and garden lighting. Basically a light that shines the light down and disperses it in kind of a circle area. Again, what we do is we like to use a really good quality fixture with a really good quality drop-in bulb. Again, it just keeps our costs down and is something I would highly recommend to get good quality, but still keep the prices down. One of the most important things when looking at path and garden lighting is the actual stem and the height. I've found over different trials that the wattage of the bulb and how much light that puts out is sometimes a lot less important than the actual height that light is sitting at. For example, I mean, a 12-inch high light is going to disperse a smaller lighting area than an 18-inch or 24-inch. I usually recommend an 18-inch is a really, really good height to cover 90% of what you're trying to do. 24 inches is good if you're trying to, you have high gardens and you want to light up a bigger area. The higher the stem, I find, obviously the more light that it's going to disperse. Just an example of path lighting again that's used in a garden. As you can see in this one, there's not a million path lights. There's 1 or 2 that do a really good job of lighting up this garden area. And then again, just using uplighting to catch that foliage and get that reflection down to help light up the rest is a really good way. Another example of a path light in a garden here to light up some nice stonework that they have. I like path lighting for that. If you have low-lying stone or some nice rocks in your garden, it's a cool way to kind of highlight and feature those. Again, an example of lighting up a pathway. But I talked about this before. It's not a light every 5 feet, right? They got 1, 2, again, 3 path lights that light up this whole area, because it's not about throwing a bunch of lights in. You want to light as much as possible with as few lights as possible, and with a good quality light at the right height, you can light up a big size area and not have to buy a whole bunch of lights. So something to consider. Again, just another example of a different kind of path light in a garden. And here's how they light up some pathways. Again, I've kind of pointed on this in some other ones, but it's not lining the pathway all down one side. I like how they stagger it. I think is a really cool way, and for whatever reason, it just seems like when you do that, it makes the light shine farther, or it seems to light up a bigger area by doing that. So I always recommend trying to do that. Try and keep as much as possible your lights in some kind of mulch or garden area. The reason for that is just so that you don't have to go and weed trim around them, and it takes a lot of extra time to do that. So just something to consider. I like using path lights in areas like this where you have nice big rocks that maybe they're not quite high enough, or it's not big enough to accent with an uplight, but using a path light to shine down on it. I love using this technique and use it all the time, because I think if you have those big rocks and features in your home, it's a really cool thing that you can light up. Example again of just how they lit up some stairways, and it's not a bunch of lights, it's just a few lights dispersed properly to at least create a little bit of light so people can see where they're going, and it looks good. And trust me, it always looks better the fewer lights you use than going over the top. So something to keep in mind. Another popular light is a wash light. All I'm going to say about this is very similar to an uplight. The difference is it's often used to showcase the front of homes and stuff. The reason being, it's got a frosted lens that creates less of a hot spot. So it's just a softer light, and it usually has a lot wider beam spread. So you can light up a much larger area with one light. These do cost more to do that, but a really good light that we use a fair bit too. But your path in your garden light and your uplight are definitely the two most popular. So some examples of how they've used it kind of in the back here to light up the front of the house. Again, stonework in larger areas like that, instead of having to put a whole bunch of lights, you can get away with one that'll cover a wider spread area. Well lighting, really all this is lights that'll go right in the ground. They're built to live in the ground, so they're really good quality, really durable. They cost quite a bit more because they do have to stay in the ground. In the area that you would use these, if you have to light up a tree and you don't have a mulch area or anything around it that you can hide the light, just bury it right in the grass. You can still mow over it. Some maintenance, just make sure you keep leaves and stuff out, but that's primarily where you would use a light like this. Downlighting, probably the most underutilized lighting that is out there. Most people will buy path and garden lights and uplighting, which are great, but downlighting, I think you can easily create some of the coolest effects. My favorite one is a moonlighting effect. So the idea of throwing it up in a tree rather than at the base, but up in a tree, shining down, looks very cool. We did one project where a lady had a patio that she would sit out all the time on, but it was in a very, very dark area. And so she tried using Christmas lights and fairy lights and patio and string lights, which all looked really cool, but it didn't look natural. And what we did is she had a really nice, tall, big poplar that kind of overhung over this patio. So we put two downlights up in that tree, and we filtered them with a blue lens that kind of mimics more of moonlight and had it shine down. And she absolutely fell in love with it. It basically created an effect that it looked like she had the brightest full moon every single night when she sat on her patio. So I think is probably the most underutilized light. The reason people don't use it as much is a little bit more work to install it, but you can create some of the coolest effects with this, and I'll show you some examples here. Here's an example of they've used it a fair bit up in these trees to light the walkway. A cool way of doing that, instead of having a whole bunch of path lights lined up, they've just put them up in the tree and have them shining down, which I think creates a pretty cool effect. Again, some up in the trees, they create some cool shadowing effects. I've showed you this picture before, but with uplighting, you can create cool things like this, where those big shadows on the ground. And this is a great example of the moonlighting. You put a blue filter on a light like this, and it's going to look like you got a really, really bright full moon in your yard. So I love downlighting, and I would recommend as much as possible to do it often. And you can do downlighting and still buy a simple uplight and just mount it up in a tree. So it doesn't have to cost more to do it. It's just a little bit more work to mount it, that's all. Again, another really cool example of how they've used it to create that moonlighting effect. Hardscape lighting, I mean, there's all kinds of different hardscape lighting, deck lights, and that kind of stuff. I'm not going to talk about a lot of them. The one that I like the most, that I see people use the most, is just this kind of this cap lighting that people will use in stonework. We use it a lot on fences. It looks really cool there too, but it just kind of hides under the brickwork, so you don't see the light, you just see the effect that it creates. So it's a really cool way of lighting up some different stone features and rock walls. Again, we use it a lot on fences and that. I don't have any pictures here, but it's a cool way to do that as well. Underwater lights, these are lights that they typically cost a little more, but you can actually put these right in the water, and they're built to last underneath the water. The one thing I would say about these is spend the money on these, because if they're cheap, there's probably a reason and they're not going to last. An underwater light with some kind of warranty is always best. And just some of the cool things you can do if you have a pond area, and it doesn't have to be a big giant pond or waterfall. It can even just be a small little water feature you have on your property. It can look really cool with some underwater lighting. So there's some examples of that. These are elaborate and over the top, but again, small ponds still looks great. And then lastly, I just want to show you some pictures comparing what it looks like during the daytime and what landscape lighting looks like when it's done properly at night. Here's two examples of a project we did up here in Calgary. Beautiful home, beautifully landscaped, great walkways and trees and features to highlight, and basically just showing you the difference between night and day. And why not, if you're going to spend this kind of money on landscaping or any money on landscaping, why not be able to enjoy it day and night, not just in the daytime? Again, another example of how we've kind of highlighted the front of the house, some walkways, how we've done that. Just again, comparing the difference between night and day. And then lastly, I want to show you the difference between a good quality light, what you find at the store in a low voltage landscape light, and then what most people buy is some type of solar light. So, here's an example of a solar light that we bought. And they do a better job than they used to, but they're only going to light up so much. And the biggest thing with these is, I would say, it's the quality. The quality is just not there. They're not going to last. You probably bought some solar lights before that you've got to replace them every year. They're not built to last yet. The technology is just not quite there. This is a box store low voltage light. It's obviously much better. Again, the quality is not going to be nearly the same, but it does do a better job of lighting. And then when you go and get a real professional, well-built fixture, that's the difference. You can see, right? Again, this is a professional, really good quality uplight versus a solar light. There's a huge difference. So yes, it costs more, but you get so much more when you go and do it properly. And lastly, just the difference. I get asked all the time. Solar lighting has its place, but there's a definite difference. What we've done here is, these are solar lights compared to good quality low voltage lights placed in the exact same spots in both pictures. And you can obviously see the difference between what a good light will get you and what, I would say fairly expensive solar lights will get you. There's just a huge difference. So I just want to leave you on a few last helpful hints that we've learned over the years. Like I've talked about, try and use as few lights as possible to light up as much as possible. You're not trying to land a plane. You don't have to line your driveways with path lights. Use some of the techniques that we showed you with the moonlighting, uplighting the foliage and getting the reflection off that is a great way to use less lights, save you money, and in the end, I think create a better looking product anyway. You can accomplish some really cool effects, and I think more and cooler effects with uplighting and downlighting than you can by using a whole bunch of path lights. I see path lights all the time, and that's why I want to teach people how to use uplighting and downlighting a lot more effectively, because I think there's so many more cool things you can do with that. I just showed you some pictures, but I'm going to tell you, don't waste your money on solar lighting. Yes, it's easy to install, but you get what you pay for. The technology just isn't there yet. It's getting better, and I've seen better solar lights, but the quality is not the same. And it's just, the technology is not that it's not out there, but it's not being sold in stores yet, or I haven't come across any kind of solar lighting yet that comes anywhere close to what you can do with some low voltage wired lighting. Another cool tip, and I talked a little bit about this, it's a little bit more technical, but ask us some questions about it because we use it all the time, is you can use filters
on your light. So if you go buy a light, like I talked about earlier, a frosted lens is a great way if you're lighting a house to minimize the hot spot and make that light a little bit softer and disperse that light a little bit. Green filters on lights we use all the time when we're trying to light up, say, an evergreen tree or any kind of really green foliage that you want to pop. You put a green filter on there and it makes it look like the healthiest plant you've ever seen. And then, like I talked about with moonlighting, the blue filters is a great way to kind of create that more natural moonlighting effect if you're using downlighting. Blue filters also work really well in the wintertime. A lot of customers we have will actually go change out the filters in their lights just for the winter to blue because it just, for whatever reason, it just stands out that much more in the snow. You know, obviously I'm from Canada here, so we don't have 12 months a year of green, so we got to do some stuff in the wintertime too that makes it look pretty cool. Um, Quickly, color, you know, I talked about that a little bit. If you're buying LED bulbs or LED lights and want to compare to what it would look like with against a halogen light, your 2700 to 3000 Kelvin temperature is what they call it, would be the equivalent to that warm yellow light that you would get on a halogen light. And then also talked about this, but beam spread. I always try and get the maximum beam spread that I can buy from a light. Reason being, I can light up more area with fewer lights that way. Again, you pay a little bit more for those bulbs, but in the long run, the cost comes down, and I think it looks better that way anyway. And then lastly is just if you're comparing wattages in different bulbs, a 4.5 watt, uplighting MR16 bulb is going to be the equivalent to a 20 watt halogen bulb, which is kind of your standard that you'll find out there. And 5.5 watts is equivalent to a 35 watt halogen.
Hey guys, hope you enjoyed that. Hope you got lots of good tips and tricks and tools and learned a bunch about the different techniques and how you can really go and make your landscape lighting pop and bring it to the next level and do stuff that your neighbors and even most landscape designers are not doing with lights, with cool moonlighting and just shadowing and all those different things. I mean, those are the things, they're small little differences, but that will make your landscape lighting project just completely get elevated to the next level. So if you have questions, you have comments, like always, and send those to me below, and I'm going to do my best to answer as many of those as I can, as well as because we're getting into Thanksgiving down in the US here, we are giving you guys a chance to save a whole bunch of money on our do-it-yourself kits, which I'm going to talk about a little bit more in the next video as well. But use coupon code Black Friday at checkout, and you're going to get some substantial savings on a lot of our do-it-yourself lighting kits. And if you want to know exactly what's in your do-it-yourself or all our do-it-yourself landscape lighting kits and why we think they're better than anything out there and how they kind of stand apart from the rest and why we call them premium quality and all those types of things, I'm going to shoot one more video coming up the next day or two that's going to explain exactly what you're going to get inside those kits, and not just the actual fixtures and stuff, but all the other bonuses that we add that we don't talk about. You don't see them on our website, but there's a bunch of extras that we throw in there, as well as some free consultations and different stuff like that. And that's why our kits have been so popular and so many people have purchased them and have shared them with their friends, is because they get a whole bunch of extra bonuses that they're just not listed on our website, because I would rather surprise you guys with a bunch of extra stuff that we found to be super helpful and will help your project, again, bring it to that next level. So stay tuned for that next video where I'm going to really get into the nuts and bolts of that and show you guys what is in those do-it-yourself kits and why they're so valuable. So thanks again for watching. Leave me your comments and questions. Follow us on social media at Lighting Doc, or check out all our videos on YouTube. And we will see you guys in the next video. Thanks again for watching.